Oh my God. Now I will start recording.
Oh, we missed a good one there, Bobby. One that might get you in trouble too, and that's
I don't know what you're talking about.
I know you do. I know you do. But hey, you know what? Let's do a show. You ready to rock?
I like shows.
Ooh, all right. Well, hey, everybody, welcome to the Stiff Truth. Bob is not ready to start, but we're going to get started anyways. He's looking fantastic this morning. Boy, the complexion's fantastic, Bobby, by the way, too. How are things going over there on your end?
It's all Hollywood magic and lighting and makeup. No, I don't wear makeup, but definitely have decent lighting. So don't believe everything you see on TV, kids.
Well, you look scrumptious today, sir. Scrumptious. But hey, I'm excited for another great show here, guys. It's gonna be spooky, it's gonna be evil, it's gonna be gross a little bit. You might go, eh. But
And then we'll get into scary things.
yes. And and that's just us recapping my last bowel movement. But no, beyond that, guys. Really jam-packed show with some great stuff today. I mean, we're going to start off, keep this horror Halloween theme going, and of course we do have to touch on a couple of things outside of that, but still kind of scary if you think about it in the grand scheme of things. But Bob, first and foremost here, how you feeling about the election coming up? You feeling good?
It's an election. Uh Personally, I think a lot of weight is put on presidents. And I think there's a little bit of sleight of hand going on here with this presidential race. I think the real meat and potatoes of this election is actually for control of the Senate, because that is the powerful governing body in America, not the executive branch. But as far as the president goes, yeah, I think we all kind of know my thoughts on these two candidates. But I think what I've been paying more attention to, though, is these state races with all these senators, because I'm curious to see what happens with control of the Senate. I mean, there's some shit up for grabs in the Senate for real right now. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I like what you just said there too, because I really do feel like of course, which rightfully so, they're the presidential candidates, but the focus is so much on these two guys from the general public that I think a lot of very important Senate and House races are being lost in the shuffle a little bit. Just not as much of a radar on them as there nearly should be, because again, that's really going to be a much bigger win or lose depending on what aisle that you're in there on how these things progress moving forward with our country. Because you're right, Trump gets reelected, Biden gets in there, really doesn't make a difference depending on what happens to the Senate. Does McConnell keep his seat and do his buddies stay, or
I think McConnell keeps the Senate seat. I don't know if he'll be speaker or the majority leader, because I don't know if who's going to retain control of the Senate right now. Lindsey Graham, head of the Judiciary Committee, sits on the National Intelligence Committee. He looks like he's going to struggle to get reelected, and so he might not just lose his position in the Senate, he might not even be a senator here in January. So that's kind of crazy to see that from Lindsey Graham in South Carolina. That's something else. But there's probably a good 10 Senate seats to watch for right now. And since the GOP controls a majority of 3, so they have 53 to 47. Well, I think it's 46 and 1 independent because of Bernie, right? But yeah, he votes Democrat. So semantics. But so if there's 3 that flip right away, then it's even, and the vice president breaks ties. Well, we know that. Well, those of us who follow civics know that. And then, but if 5 of those seats flip, and then even if Trump gets reelected, but if the Democrats have the Senate, ain't nothing going to happen. See you in 2020. I mean, it's just going to be status quo, lame duck forever. I mean, he won't sign any bills into law. They won't have enough to veto. It's just going to be, we're just going to be spinning circles here for a couple of years if that's what happens.
Oh, we kind of do that already, but yeah, even more so, right? Because then they're like anybody that wants to see any kind of resolutions or solutions being dished out in the next 4 years over very, very important, crucial current topics. They're going to be in for a lot of disappointment if it happens either way, right? Let's face it, right? Biden gets in there and everybody kind of stays with the Republican majority in the Senate. Same thing.
Same thing. Yep.
He's gonna Biden and his administration are gonna be trying to push through a lot of shit, and it's gonna die on the Senate floor, just like Mitch McConnell's fucking chin. But other than that, yeah, I mean, it's gonna be. I hate to say this too, because I kind of when I do vote, I have to admit this. When I vote, and honestly, either if I do it in person or if I just can't find enough information to really make a very, I guess, not just informed decision, but I don't have much time to sit on it or something like that. I'll usually flip flop back and forth. I'll go Republican, I'll go Democrat, and I'll flip it. If I do that, I'll trade off because I honestly don't want either or to have the majority for the House or the Senate. So that's my kind of way of I guess checking balances myself if I'm not educated enough. But the reason why I say that is like I really would hate to see the lame duck scenario, but I'd also hate to see what happens if they both go one way for another 4 years, right? If it both goes right for another 4 years, and what kind of undoing can happen there potentially to a lot of important maybe social and environmental programs, even more so.
Well, the Senate's up for grab every 2 years. So
yeah.
So how it is they have 6-year terms, of course, but then every 2 years there's a third that are up for re-election. So they stagger them out like that. So every 2 years, a third of the senators are running for re-election. So there's always a chance pretty much there to flip power every 2 years with the Senate.
I say it's a little bit harder to do when it's not a presidential race, though. I think it's
midterms are way harder.
Yeah. I think it's more of a people are looking for more of a change around just all around, all encompassing during a presidential election. But again, yeah, it'll be interesting, man. But I think that's the real horror story here is what's going on in our country in general, not this fun stuff we get to
right, not these like creepy backgrounds behind us or ghouls and ghosts and goblins. It's these lifelong politicians just sucking the life force of our country away all the time to benefit a re-election and corporate interest. It sucks, man, and that's not partisan. Both parties are beholden to their corporate interests that fund their campaigns.
Yeah, and their own personal interests too, right? It's a combination of like everybody's just greasing their pockets essentially here and telling everybody that we're going to improve life for everybody in the country, which is not really the case.
Yeah, unless senators have offshore bank accounts right now that are just stacking money.
I don't know how many senators are there total.
100.
There you go. That many. Right. Seriously. Okay. Maybe 98. All right. Maybe Rand Paul and somebody else doesn't have one.
Bernie. Yeah, it's like Bernie and Rand Paul are like the outliers here.
But hey, again, keeping with the scary theme of our show, let's jump right into talking more about the presidential debate. Round 2. Game day, baby. Fight night. What'd you think?
We had one. Who knew? The fucking mute button. Man, we have great ideas.
I'm telling you what. Yeah, no, we talked about this prior to the show too. And it's one of those things. Too little, too late, I guess is a good phrase I could use here. Or see what happens when you let the other person talk and actually listen to what they're saying and see what the American people get too. I don't know about you, but I did not watch the debate in entirety. I'll admit that right now. I am a little bit behind on my horror movie watching. So about 3/4 of the way in, I was like, okay, I've got to watch another horror movie right now. I'm behind the 8 ball here. I need to catch up. But what I did watch was enough for me to say, wow, look at that. Again, maybe a little too late kind of scenario there, but it was quite refreshing to see these guys be able to finish their sentence and their thoughts and have the other guys counter with very minimal interruption. And I don't know, dare I say it was actually quite professional?
Yeah, that moderator definitely struck fear into those candidates because you could see. So not only so the debate format, right? You could ask a question, you have 2 minutes uninterrupted. That's the standard practice. Well, there's an actual automated mute for the other candidate during that time. So that's all automated. But then the other person gets a response, again, automated mute, and then it's open floor for both candidates to have a discussion where the mics aren't muted. But she had a button on her table for both candidates if they did start interrupting each other during those conversations, and you could see the fear from both of them in two ways. They didn't want to talk with a muted mic and look dumb.
Trump probably more so than
Right.
Biden.
So I mean, they both wanted to, I'm sure, but they didn't. Right? They didn't do it on camera. And then the other one, when the other one was talking in their open time, they did a really good job, because I think that being the one that gets muted is damning the next day. Right?
Oh, dude, you don't want to have. That's like mom like telling you to shut up and like hitting you with a fucking shoe and shit in the head. It's right in front of your siblings. No, it was cool. Now, did you see, which I thought was really funny, and you're goddamn right, Trump and Biden, but Trump especially, he wanted to interject so many times, and I love what he did. It was kind of like, it's almost they had this little fucking side deal before the debate with him and the moderator. Like the moderator came up, like grabbed him by the fucking balls and squeezed him real hard. Be like, listen, fucker, don't you fucking make me look like shit out here, okay? I will fuck you up. Maybe she's got some dirt on him.
End you.
I don't know what it was, dude. But every single time he was like, open his mouth, put his hand up, wanted to say something. He'd look at her, give like a little half smile, and be like, okay, and put his hand out like, I'm cool. Hey, and he did it so many times. It was pretty funny. It was like he kept getting confirmation that giving confirmation to her, like, okay, we had this agreement. So there was some under the table agreement there. I don't want to know the terms. It is Trump, so I have no idea where, and my imagination just wanders here. But that was a pretty, to me, a very comical part of it that was still very professional. Somebody obviously was very passionate about interrupting, correcting what Biden was saying, wanting to, overcome something that he thought was false. But he checked himself by checking the moderator out and be like, no. Do you think maybe this had anything to do with it? Let's face it. These are both guys that think they're big swinging dicks. They both obviously lifetime politician for Biden, lifetime just aristocratic type, millionaire, media or real estate mogul guy in Trump, where they just didn't respect another man much at all, but with a good looking, strong woman, and I mean like a younger, strong woman, not like Kamala Harris, tells them to shut up. They actually listen. I thought that was interesting.
I think there was something to, I think her having the mute button and then getting muted by a woman. I think, I swear, I think that like drove home the fear. Chris Wallace tweeted after the debate that he was super jealous of her button. For real, a real thing. He's super jealous. But yeah, there's just something to that. If the fly can take that much media space post VP debate, imagine what someone getting would do.
Right in the middle of mid sentence. He's like, no, I want to, just totally silenced, like, oh, and that woman did it to me too. That strong, opinionated, loud woman that kept shutting me up. She did a good job over talking them when they got loud too and started to get into the interrupting kind of, snowball effect or whatever. She did speak very loudly. And I'm not saying Chris Wallace didn't, but Chris Wallace, love the guy. Good reporter. He's a pushover though. He is a pushover. It was really easy for them to just be all, shut up, Chris, sit down. But no, again, he didn't have the button. That's power right there. Yeah. And he didn't have a vagina. So
I think all moderators need a button. Just that fear of authority, so that everyone is clear. The moderator is running the show. If you fuck around, you will look foolish. I think that needs to just be the standard going forward. There's just always needs to be a mute button like that. So that way everyone can at least have that healthy respect of let's be honest, the person in charge of the debate. That's what a moderator is.
This is true. Debate. Isn't it somewhat, I wouldn't even say somewhat, isn't it pretty effing sad though that we have to think that this needs to be part of the standard operating procedure moving forward with debates? There needs to be a mute button because there was never ever a need or even a discussion about it prior to the first debate. You know what I mean? It's almost like, hey, these guys got
to, man.
It's the Trump effect. Yeah. I don't know how to explain myself there. I was going to try to go into how, how you have to wear adult diapers sometimes when you shit yourself as an adult. But I don't know where I was going with that. So I digress. What
Well,
I
you
do
were talking
want to
about
say,
Trump and Biden, so I was just gonna guess there.
oh, yeah, elderly men that usually diarrhea of the mouth. What if it was coming out the other end and they had to be safeguarded by other people by wearing a diaper? I could see where I could piece that together if I had a little bit more time to think about it, but I don't want to go there. Let me ask you this though. After we, again, obviously some vast improvements with the respect and follow through of the rules and the format of a debate on both ends of the table. We agree there. Beyond that, I mean, what do you think about content wise? I mean, we talked before how they just kind of campaign talking circles from both the guys. Same thing with the VP. Did you think that they stepped up their game there, or was it literally just a more courteous debate on your, in your view?
It was a little more courteous. I think there was a few key things said on both sides at certain times, but there was nothing that really blew my hair back. I mean, uh, everything was pretty much expected. I didn't expect um, Biden to even speak about the oil bomb, and obviously what he said about oil and having to scale oil back by 2035 and hitting certain national goals of emissions with manufacturing, and then scaling oil consumption back to basically zero emissions by 2050, which isn't completely no oil, but it's definitely, almost completely no oil. I mean, we still need like lubrication, things like that. But so kind of dropping that was a little bit eye opening. And I don't think that he felt he worded it very well for his position, because on the way out of like to the parking lot there, well, actually, it was before he was getting on his plane, but he took the time that night to talk to the reporters to clarify his position on that exact topic. So obviously there was something there that he was like, huh, that didn't come out right. That sounded really bad. Well, I mean, it sounded really true. But yes,
Mm-hmm.
when you're trying to win Pennsylvania and you're trying to make an impact on Texas, yeah, it's probably a bad thing. But again, would you rather he lie about it? I don't know.
Oh, is that rhetorical? Oh, I will say this. You're right. And I think, and then we talked about this before. There's really no easy way to drop the bomb or even kind of slice it in there, right, into your dialogue that you're going to get away from fossil fuels when it's the lifeblood of our energy and economy. I mean, it keeps things turning right now. So I think, and I understand what you're saying too, and I understand where Biden, went with that. He's like, I got to do a little bit of got to do a little patch up work here on what I said during the debate. I got to make sure this doesn't come out too twisted, because I think that makes a lot of people super nervous, not just the states and not just the people that are in energy jobs, but in general. And again, it's one of those things. It's why a lot of people on the right, or even people that are more conservative fiscally, get very, very nervous about something like the Green New Deal and like putting that in place ASAP and ripping the Band-Aid off, because it would literally, in my mind, and I know like kind of on this end, it would destroy like the energy infrastructure of the United States and cripple the economy that probably way worse than the pandemic. And we really don't have the technology or the means or the practices at scale to have renewable energy to replace that right now. So I don't think people see as like you said, if he could have really tactfully almost written down a speech just to answer that question correctly,
Right.
and have somebody proofread it, that would have been his smartest move. And still, it would have been very hard to not have people in Texas, Pennsylvania, South
Even New
Dakota.
Mexico.
Yeah, a lot of places, dude, that really, Montana. I mean, again, you don't get a lot of electoral votes from these places, but at the same time, they add up, and it's not just those places, but those are the ones that, like, directly affect their amount of employment, right, and their livelihoods. And then you got the rest of the people that are like, ooh, that doesn't sound like a good idea. So yeah, that's a tough one to field. But like you had said, would you rather the guy say no? Because then you lose the entire left, and then you lose the
Right.
extreme left for sure. You're like,
It's
oh
gonna be
no,
all good. We're gonna keep our oil forever, with a fake politician smile with like a gleam coming and a little ding.
When I become president, we will have a world where there will be clean oil production and burning of fuels, and there will also be equally the amount of clean renewable energy because I will make it happen. Ding, a little wink. You're like,
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
everybody's happy. Everybody's a winner.
Yeah, we know that change is coming. It's very tough to talk about because if you're in the energy sector and that's providing your family's livelihood,
Sure.
it's a difficult thing to do. I mean, obviously, there's going to have to be a long plan that involves, state and federal government subsidization, maybe education opportunities. There's going to have to be a change over there and transitioning people, maybe implementing trade schools so that people, instead of going into the oil fields, they're going into the solar fields and the wind fields. And so it's like you said earlier in our conversation before the show, it's a long, slow rip of the Band-Aid, but the Band-Aid must come off. So the less painful we can make that transition, the better. But we are limited. I mean, there's only a certain amount of time we have. Oil will run out, and if oil runs out before we're ready, we're just fucked. The whole world.
This is true. This is true. I mean, and this sounds like we could take this just like they could have. I almost think what should have happened for the sake of one, not Biden kind of digging himself a bigger ditch, with this topic with a lot of people. It's very polarizing in the sense that depending on how he answered this is like we just talked about, how he answers this could literally make him lose some of his base or some of the extreme left, or if like he answered it here, makes everybody that's fiscally conservative, that's more worried about what's happening right now, not looking 10, 20 years ahead,
Yep.
Gonna lose them, right? And it's a tightrope, dude. It's a very hard thing to do. I almost would have tabled this. Kind of like, hey, you don't want to answer the thing about packing courts? I would have done the same thing with this, dude, and been like, you know what? Not super important right now. Guys, we're going to have oil for a while because we need it. When it makes sense, we will definitely ramp up to replace with renewable energy, but we need that to be scalable. And I don't want to talk about it any further. Let's talk about Trump's $750 tax return. Okay, just kind of pivot and deflect.
I don't want the whole debate to be about oil. That's great.
He's like, I don't want to answer that. Like he did with the court packing thing. I don't want to answer that question. Well, why don't you want to answer the question? Because my answer will be the rest of the debate. It'll be the highlight of everything. And I don't want to be the highlight of everything here. This is not about me. And then he could do his little thing where he points at the camera and talks to the American people. This is about you. This is about your families. This is about making America better. Forget anybody said anything about oil. Let's just focus on making America better and making sure that we have enough ventilators, right, guys?
Dude, that's that 47 years experience chiming in. Right.
He can't even get away from it either. I love it. He does it multiple times in every debate. He's like, where's the camera? Where's it? You? It's great.
Right. Yeah. Other than that, I was expecting more mudslinging in the debate. I was expecting more about why you suck from each of the candidates, and there was very little of that. I thought it was more about, a plan. I thought it was refreshing to hear Biden actually come out with a reasonable outline of a coronavirus plan. So that was kind of cool to actually hear someone has a plan for something and to hear bulletin points for ideas of something instead of just, it's going to be the best. We've been hearing that for fucking a year now, so that was refreshing to actually hear some sort of a plan. But overall, I enjoyed the debate. It reminded me of how debate should be. And like you said, if that debate was the first debate, I think our polling numbers might look a lot different than they do right now.
Yeah. And I think I said that prior to the show too, like before the show, but yeah, no, you're absolutely right because.
Well, you're absolutely right.
Well, I appreciate that. Look at us, looking over here, sucking each other's dicks again. But no, what's great though is, or what's not great though, that's exactly what happened here. It's like, again, too little, too late kind of scenario, but you're right. You erased the first impression, and the most important impression was the first debate where it was a complete shit show. I don't care who you're backing. Nobody did well in that debate. And it was just, you could look at it either way. You could look at it as Trump was out of hand, but Biden played into him, went down and lowered himself to Trump's standards, vice versa, whatever it was. There was nothing but finger pointing and blaming and name calling in that one. You're right. You fucking remove that one, make this the first debate. All of a sudden, I think Trump has a slight lead in swing states over Biden. I think that's very easily plausible, right? So it's interesting because we talked about this too. I walk in and I don't mind saying it. I'm not voting Trump, so whatever, but I walk into the second debate blind. I don't know anything about these guys' history, all the press that they've gotten over the past 20, 100 years, doesn't even matter when you talk about Biden 100 years. But I literally would have thought, you know what? This is the incumbent president. I think he did a better job than the other guy on this one. That's my honest opinion. Now, was it overwhelming? Was it a landslide thing? Absolutely not. I couldn't say that because, again, there were still both holes on each side of the argument, but he did a much better job composing himself and answering questions and staying on topic. That was the biggest thing for me with the first one. Not only the interrupting, but they couldn't stay on fucking topic, man. They couldn't stay on the question at hand. They kept fucking veering off into another lane like an old man that needs to be tested for his driver's license again.
Right. We want to talk about the coronavirus. Well, let's talk about oil.
You're a coronavirus. Blue lives matter. You're just like, what,
right.
what are we doing here? What are we doing here?
Completely agree. The first debate was so sloppy and incoherent, and it wasn't even a debate. It was just a couple of old codgers up there arguing over the widow lady that just moved in next door, like grumpy old man. That's what it was, right?
And she's a smoke show for 72. You know what I mean? Like that kind of
feel her in, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, that's what it reminded me of. I think I even posted something about with a picture of the guys from Two Grumpy Old Men, Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. Look at me go! No, the whole cast.
Oh, you know Walter Matthau's son, Kevin Pollak. Oh, another great actor. Daryl Hannah too, the daughter of Jack Lemmon. Ooh, yeah, woo. Sorry, that's kids. This was a movie in the mid 90s to two men that are long-standing Hollywood fame that are both deceased now. God rest their souls. We can,
but fantastic.
Yeah.
So yeah, this debate was so much better. I really do wish that this was the first one. We had two more coming, but instead this was the second and last one because we got robbed of the second one, which at that time probably for the best.
Yeah, and I think honestly, the way this debate played out, both these guys did some heavy reflecting on the first one, and I think they were pushed into seeing that. Both of their camps are like, hey, both of them, Biden too, like, dude, watch this again. Like, you need to study this, and we need to have a little test afterwards about what did you do wrong here, or how did you let the other person make you look stupid? Because on both sides of the table, horrendous. But yeah, it was refreshing. Again, maybe a little too late kind of deal. And with it being the second one, like we had said before, the first one was the opportunity to have that impression and actually win some undecided votes. So that was kind of a wash in this one. I feel, again, maybe there was maybe a very small percentage of people that were tuning in to be swayed subconsciously. I want to be swayed one way or the other. Show me who's more trustworthy. Show me who I can get behind. Show me that I feel sorry for this guy or whatever. But again, do you think, I don't really think it affected it too much. I think what's going to affect it the most right now is the constant campaigning that both are doing in swing states. For some reason, this seems to make a little bit of a difference at the very end of the race when they start going into battleground states, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Florida, Texas, Wisconsin, and they just start campaigning like motherfuckers. We'll see what happens though.
Why don't we just skip all this bullshit and we just let Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania vote? And if they can't decide it, we'll open it up to the rest of the country because this is kind of getting ridiculous, right? In the late 80s, early 90s, it was always like Ohio was a big one because of how many votes that they had, and everyone else is pretty much in lockstep with their voting. But now it's become these three, for the last three presidential elections. So very strange. I also kind of two things with what you're saying is in this debate. I don't really think it's going to matter a whole lot as far as swaying any potential voters. First off, a third of all people that are going to vote have already.
That's true. It's already been about 50 million and some change that have done early mail-in voting.
And that was a couple days ago. Shit, it's probably up to 60 or 70 now.
Sure.
I've already voted.
I have not, just to let everybody know.
So then, and typically on a large turnout like is going to be this one, it's compared to the 2008 one, right? So we're going to look at about 150 million people voting. So like half of the country, all right, ish. So half people vote, which sucks, but whatever, go vote. Fuck America, play some patriotic music and fireworks. But other than that, there's a week left to election, so
That's crazy, isn't
pretty
it?
much everyone at this point is pretty much there with what they're going to do. Um, so that's why it's so critical for that first debate to be the winner. So Trump did well in his first debate against Hillary 4 years ago,
Oh, he
and
surprised people. Yeah, he
and that's
surprised me. Yeah.
yeah, that really pulled him closer to and tightened up that race in the last couple few weeks. Whereas this time again, he did much better in this debate, just in general. And but there's a week left, week and a half. I think there's 10 days left or something like that until
Mhm.
election day, and pretty much all states that allow early voting are already happening. All
Mhm.
right. At
Mhm.
this point, I think like 40 or so out of the 50 states, some states don't even allow it. It's absentee or day of.
Really? I did
Yeah.
not know that. Do you know an example of a state that does this? It's probably one of the ones that we're both dying to live in, I would imagine. Alabama, Mississippi, Kentucky, South Dakota.
Let me see. Or maybe they just didn't start until like the last week or
Oh, okay.
something. But
Well, I think they I
I'll
think
look at while you do this.
yeah, I think most of the people, most states now are probably on board with it simply because of the coronavirus. Safe voting and everything. Which again, I'm still waffling on: do I mail in my ballot? Do I go in and I do it? Because they're like, well, you got to vote safe this year. I'm like, I go to Costco and I go to the grocery store every single week. I have for the past 7-8 months. I think I can. I think I can muscle out going to a booth with my mask on with some disinfectant wipes or whatever they're going to have anywhere in place to make sure it is safe, and vote there too. My thing is, you don't nearly get to do the research on the candidates when you go to the ballot, the ballot booth. So there's that too.
Okay. Yeah. So it looks like most states do allow early, but some are like 10 days before the day, 11 days. So,
Hmm.
uh,
They make you wait till the end, huh? I like that. I kind of like that because you know what? For somebody, and I guess if you're that dead set on voting for somebody a year before you even see them interact, 6 months before you even see them interact with the other candidate, good for you. But are you really doing yourself justice, especially if it really came down to the wire and you had a hard time deciding? You're like, well, I already mailed in my ballot. I can't do anything about it now. What if this other debate happened and one of them that you voted for, whoever was, I back up David Duke and the KKK 110%. When I get reelected or when I become president, I'm going to make sure that there's a white cleansing in the country or something crazy like that. And you're like, oh, fuck, I voted for that guy 3 months ago. Jesus Christ.
yeah,
Can
it
you
looks
imagine?
like all states allow early voting. There's about a dozen of them that allow it 10 to 14 days before. So as in New Mexico, we can vote 4 weeks before election day. So it started on like I don't know October 6th or something like that.
We don't need to
So
try to do any math. It's still the AM. You
I
know what
was
I
told
mean?
there would be no math.
This was supposed to be a fun conversation with a friend of mine. I did not know I'd need my calculator, especially my scientific calculator. Please.
But yeah,
Well,
it is a shame that like there's people that don't vote. I mean, you should at least vote. Interesting vote. I got a call from our county treasurer candidate, right?
hmm.
Like literally got a call, and I'm like, oh, huh, who the hell is this number? And I answer this call, and it's a candidate running for county treasurer, and I was just like, oh, well. So they like went all the way to like probably buy a bunch of numbers to call and all of this, and then she personally called, not had a campaigner call or whatever. And I was just like, you know what? I don't even care what party she's for. I'm voting for her just because I want my county treasurer to have that kind of work ethic. That sounds fantastic.
You know what? Good
Um,
for you. Good for you.
so
I like that.
I did vote for her, but just thought that was interesting. If only and every candidate had work ethic like that. But at the presidential level, it would kill those guys.
Really. Seriously.
they're not far. We gotta preserve these old guys.
That's a really interesting kind of idea that you bring up. Can you imagine, even with how polarizing and how much you hate him or love him kind of scenario it is, if I got a phone call from Donnie Trump, like a personal phone call, and he's like, "Hey, what's up? It's Donald Trump," and I'm like, "Get the fuck out of here," you know what I mean? But then I realized it is. This is this president. He called me on the phone to, tell me that he cares about me and my family and blah 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 and all this kind of stuff, and gave me like a little heartfelt kind of pep talk on the phone, it would be kind of tough not to consider voting for the guy after hanging
Sure.
up. If that was the first time that had ever happened, you're like, dude, whoa. Like the president literally reached out to me. Now, granted, maybe that's just me being some kind of quasi starstruck with a politician or something like that, or just. But again, it would be that wow them with this experience that you didn't get from anybody else. It turned into almost like a customer service kind of 11-star thing. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's just interesting.
Well, once you've developed like an interpersonal interaction with someone, you will have that, affection towards them, a little bit more so than not. I would imagine too. I mean, back in the day, before corporate places were funding campaigns, so probably 150 years ago, but there used to be these train campaigns, and these politicians would literally spend the whole damn year going town to town,
Mhm.
interviewing with newspaper reporters, and then going to these places. That's where the whole kissing babies and shaking hands and all that comes from. Was they'd
Oh,
actually go and they'd meet people and talk to them, not just go and stand up on a podium in front of their plane and give a speech and then run right back to the plane and onto the next one, stand in front of the plane and give a speech and then right back to the next one. So it's a lot more personal. I think that if there was campaign finance reform and we got a way to get these corporations out of it, I think you'd see a lot more of that again. I think you'd see people trying to reach out and get more personal with these folks, and especially these swing states.
It's interesting that you say that too. I kind of just like I thought of a comparison with the music industry. With the uptick and kind of the fading away of like hard copy, like vinyl, not just vinyl, but like CDs and record sales and stuff like that. How that's not nearly a thing that they can stand on anymore for revenue generating because of everybody downloading stuff and illegally downloading stuff.
Yeah.
They have to tour a hell of a lot more to actually make decent money, which is great for the fans. And I kind of see that as the same way for politicians and how we understand, know, and just at the end of the day, Ken, think about that. If Trump gave your baby a kiss on the head and you didn't think one way or another about him, you'd be like, that's pretty fucking cool. Or Biden, you know what I mean? Whatever. I'm just using
Yeah.
him as an
Just
example.
a person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just if they took the
just
time to
some
come
random,
out
just
and
some
say,
random
hey,
guy.
yeah, if someone comes up to you and they shake your hand and like, hey, what is your name? What do you do? Cool. This is your family? Well, it's a really pleasure to meet you guys. I'm here to try to like help
Yeah.
these middle class folks like yourself and yada, 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 and then move on. Just that quick interaction. You're like, that guy took the time to, ask our name, ask what I did, just a few questions and then move on. But obviously there's 300 plus million people in the country. You can't do that to everyone, but you could probably do it to enough to win.
This is true. And you could do it you could take the time to go to all 50 states and at least go to a couple different rallies, right? And do that with a couple of people, and then word of mouth too. And then dude, the media and press coverage of you interacting with these common, putting up air quotes here, common people, right? It's like, oh, Trump is or Biden or whoever, Mr. Candidate is so in touch with the people, so down to earth, so relatable. He's just like us. He kissed my baby's head.
And
Whatever.
I'm also going to also advocate that the RNC and the DNC start picking candidates that are like, under 180 years old.
This would be nice. That way they can be kind of relevant. You know what I
Uh,
mean? And
well,
relatable.
then and just like when they go to meet people, like these guys are so old, they don't want you hugging them. Like they're like Bob Barker's last couple years, to where like he wouldn't let you touch him because you might knock him down and he'll break a hip. Like
Yeah.
that's where these candidates are at. Like whoa, don't touch me. There's stairs 10 feet over there. This could get dangerous.
Plus too, not to smear the elderly because we need to respect them and take care of them. But when you get to a certain age too, you start to smell old. And that's not ever, that's not ever an endearing kind of a trait and a first impression that you would get from somebody that hugs you either. Like
Are you talking about like the mothball smell?
well, that and like Werther's Originals, you know what I mean?
Hey, I have some of those.
Of course you do. You're 40.
They're delicious.
I think, don't you get a free case of them from AARP when you turn 40 as like a welcome coming soon, Bob? You'll be coming soon to the fold here. You know what I'm talking about.
No, I'm looking forward to it.
Again, let's why don't we do this? I think we've talked about the horror story of our country for long enough without getting ourselves a little something stiffer to drink beyond my lovely coffee that I'm now out of.
Okay. Well, let's roll down there and handle that.
All right, handle your business. I'll see you in a minute.
Cheers, Scotty.
Oh, cheers all the way. Cheers to your tits.
Cheers for fears.
Oh, it's a great band.
Cheers for beers.
Easy cheer. Go ahead and recline that thing all the way back. Pour yourself a nice little bottle of bubbly.
Hey there.
Hey, guy. You know,
Hold on. I gotta switch my
Oh,
Bluetooth
Jesus.
around a second.
We've got technical difficulties.
I lost my my headset. It died.
Oh, bummer. That's a nice one, too. But what I was going to say, Bob, is, can you hear me?
You're coming over like the wrong speakers.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll keep talking. I feel really bad. And I know everybody probably knows who we are, but I neglected to introduce us at the beginning of the show. What a rookie mistake. You know what I mean? So,
Really?
anyways, yeah. I just kind of jumped right in, assuming everybody knows who we are. That's how much of a big head I have. So I'll just go ahead and lay it out there now, in case anybody that has listened to us for about 45 minutes now talking about the presidential debate and they have no idea who these clowns are, but yet you're engaged to keep listening. I'm Scott Casanova, and this is Bob West.
Hey, hi, new person.
Yeah. Big ballsy Bobby West.
Well, let's show these new people how we do it after this break.
Mm-hmm.
Like that.
I'll tell you what.
It's floated. Oh, it's floated.
Oh, you did. You floated that. Look at you go. See, I went with how I watched the video on how to do it. So good for you. Good for you. Have a little.
Well, it's going to be tough because that part on top's all vodka. It still tastes
my God. You know what's interesting too, though. This is the first time because I went and stirred mine. I watched a video with the stir, and I was like, I'm gonna do the stir. I've never had a drink that looks like literal shit water until this drink. Like literally, it looks like poo poo. So it was interesting to see that when I mixed it up.
I was gonna say it kind of looks like tea, but okay, we could go there. Like some wet duck mud.
Yeah, it really looks. Yeah, it looks bad. It looks like after a diuretic explosion night before having some carne arrabbiata or something like that. Yeah, that's what it kind of looks like. But for anybody that doesn't know, I don't assume anybody would really know. I don't think I posted this one, but today, kids, we are having a legit drink called the Freddy Krueger. Interesting enough, this drink has nothing to do with Freddy Krueger or Nightmare on Elm Street at all. It doesn't look anything like it. It doesn't taste anything that would kind of lead you to believe that it has something to do with it at all. It's just a beefy drink at the end of the day, Bob. I mean, what do we got here? We've got Sambuca, which is a Italian liqueur, usually an after dinner drink. Pretty strong though, 42% alcohol, so 84 proof, right? Then you got vodka and a personal favorite of the show, good old Jägermeister. So equal parts of each, an ounce. Bob floated his, as you can see, and I went ahead and just stirred it up and made it a nice little shitwater blend.
Yeah, and it's a great drink for me personally. If for all of you that don't know, it tastes like black jelly beans. I mean, this is a black licorice drink. Sambuca is the alcoholic version of that flavor. So, I mean, and a lot of people think of Jaeger as a licorice. Sambuca's got it on taste. It is pungent. It is so pungent with its black licorice taste. It's delicious if you like black licorice.
And what's really interesting, what I was watching yesterday, I was watching that video on these people making it, and they did like a cocktail kind of podcast kind of format with it too. But Sambuca has, like, as you know, it's got like probably about 15, 20 different makers. You know what I mean? And what it is no mystery. It's not like Jägermeister, which is kind of like the KFC secret recipe kind of shit. Right. You know what I mean? So you've got literally what Sambuca is, and there's other drinks that are like it. It's elderflower like extract or something like that.
Elderberry, like what cough drops are made of.
Yeah, elderberry, but and then this. And then Jaeger's what 56 different blends of botanicals or some shit like that. It says on the bottle, and that's why they don't have any duplicates because they're doing their own thing. Very smart by Jaeger because you can't have any knockoff Smith's brand Jaegers, but you can do that
No.
with Sambuca.
And it's like Benedictine, and it's kind of like
Galliano.
Galliano.
That's our favorite. That's a fan favorite of the show right there. Good old Galliano.
So with these botanicals, one of the key ingredients in all of them, for a fact, is elderberry.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. But
yeah,
this one's a good one. It's stiff. It reminds me of the rusty nail with how strong it is.
But sweeter. You know?
Definitely sweeter.
Yeah, 100%. It's a good drink, and it fits well with our theme. And man, I'll tell you what, it is getting a little bit tough, I will say. And I got to pat ourselves on the back for continuously keeping the creative juices flowing when we're coming up with cocktails to do for the show. I don't know if you remember, Bob, but many moons ago, meaning, 37 and 38 weeks ago, we were thinking we were going to have to recycle cocktails pretty soon after we started doing them. But we were not thinking outside the box. We were not thinking big picture.
We were thinking with cocktails that we knew of.
Yeah.
We weren't thinking about cocktails that we didn't know of.
You're like, okay, so we'll have a martini, a margarita, a Bloody Mary, scotch, and then
a White Russian, and that's about it. So after 7 shows, we'll have to recycle.
Yeah. But it's been fun because, and as you know now, got to let everybody know too. I was telling Mr. Mike Lenz he needs to get one because I was shot him a picture of this yesterday. I was like, hey, this is a Freddy Krueger. He's like, never heard of that. What did I do right away? Sent him a link over to the Bartender's Black Book. I was like, well, you need to pick one of these bad boys up. A lot of things
That's true.
that you probably never heard of that are fun to get in there. Now, Bob, you recently just got one of those. Tell the Stiffies how exciting and just joyful it is to kind of thumb through there and read the different drinks and see all that fun stuff.
So there's 200 pages of drinks, and there's about 30 or so drinks on each page. So to buy it, I'm no Andrew Yang, but I think that's like, 6,000 drinks or something crazy. There's a lot of drinks in there. It is really cool. And I get excited too. When I start thumbing through there and I see a drink and I'm just like, oh, look, what is this drink? Oh, this is kind of a variation of this drink that we do. And, you start getting that knowledge in, but interesting twists on things, right? So the difference between like a Bahama Mama and a Mai Tai, it's subtle, but there is a difference, right? So
sure. Well,
I was looking through it for, I don't know, a good half hour or so after I got it. Which, thank you, by the way.
Oh, you're welcome. You're
looking
welcome.
out.
Yeah. Well, and you're right, too. How cool is it to kind of progress in our knowledge of just how to make cocktails and different, like foundational types of cocktails, and be like, oh, it's another long drink. It's another version of this, like you were just saying. So it is kind of cool to be able to pick that out because there's a billion different variations you can do of drinks, but there seems to be like a set standard of types of drinks, and then they just kind of stem off from that. And it's cool when you start recognizing that, or you even start recognizing how certain things are going to taste, just based off of, hey, call it what you will. Some people will call us alcoholics, but we're straight up mixologists in training. You know what I mean? So we take this quite seriously. I think we're taking a master class about it pretty soon.
Yeah, I've enjoyed our journey with all of these drinks, and it's funny because Jess asked me, why don't you guys make cocktails out of stuff that you have? You always have to go buy new stuff, and I'm like, and that's the beauty of it. Because if I made a cocktail from stuff that we have, I wouldn't get to buy new stuff. I like adding to the bar to have that variety all the time.
And you would be extremely limited on what you could make if we go by what we normally get. If you had Scotch, Canadian whiskey, Irish whiskey, vodka, and some mixers, you can only make so much. But right now on the Rolodex here, I've got 3 or 4 different types of Italian liqueur. I've got lemon liqueur, sour apple liqueur, blue and red curacao, just all kinds of shit that you need for other stuff if you really want to get in there and have some depth and explore new things. So
yeah, and those liqueurs, like, they last a long time. Like that Benedictine, how long do you think that bottle's going to last?
It's funny. It's so funny that you mentioned the Benedictine. And the reason why is I literally yesterday, as I was doing inventory, and I do inventory before I go to the liquor store to even get stuff.
Sure.
I was like, what else do I need to re-up on? How are we doing here? I noticed the Galliano's like almost empty. The limoncello, literally, I don't even know why I have it up there. It looks like a thing of saliva, like
Just a reminder that you need it. It's like,
yeah, it's like there's like a little bit of backwash left in the limoncello. And then I pick up the Benedictine. I was like, huh, I haven't had this since the show. I was like, that's interesting. I think it was one. I think I did try to make like a rusty nail version with Benedictine. I think we talked about this. Not as good. Not nearly as
yeah,
good.
it's not as good. I have used it though after the show to scare me up some more Singapore slings at one point.
Very nice.
So, but if broadening our horizons is the theme of the show, right? Everyone should educate yourself and things that you're unaware of. Let's not be ignorant people. That's not the Stiffy way. This is the way.
No.
So,
we're enlightened alcoholics. That's what we are.
Right. Getting to experience all these different drinks, it's fun. It's exciting. Like when you go to make a drink and you're just like, what do I have? What do I not have? But then you get to go through and you get to play around, and then you kind of learn the different palettes of things. And so you get an idea. Well, if I add this to this, I kind of know generally that this is going to go well together and it's going to taste like this. And so, very, very fun. Drinking is so much more fun when you get to go and really have this variety to look for. An alcoholic grabs a bottle of Evan Williams and just turns it up, right? That's an alcoholic. So look, there's a difference between a connoisseur that likes to experiment and be, have fun flavors to play with and then make these interesting cocktails and drinks. And then it is just, well, I'm going to drink to, forget about my family tonight. So, that's not the way. It's just not.
I wish we could show more people the way, Bob, but until we have a worldwide uninterrupted platform with 1 billion viewers, I guess people are just going to have to dig around and look for it like us. You know what I mean? So
That's true. Speaking of digging around and look for, I think we should talk about our new That's a Mystery.
Yeah. Before we get into it, it's kind of funny how we literally could probably do an entire show with 0 topics. But anyways.
Oh, we have topics this show?
We bullet pointed at a couple things for this show, and yet here we are looking to get back on schedule. But yes, That's a Mystery. Some good stuff here today. Bob, why don't you lay it out? What are we talking about today?
Well, we thought it would be fun to talk about vampires.
Ooh.
So if you were wondering, if you're watching on YouTube, which some reason in the last couple of weeks, plenty of people have been, we have these spooky, vampire related things. You have to tie Scott's a little bit together, but I think pretty much everyone knows about old Vlad the Impaler.
Vladdy, what a good guy.
So there is a pretty gruesome depiction of what his pastimes were in Scotty's background there, and it's a bunch of bodies hanging from huge, spikes. So it's terrifying. And then, I'm in some kind of run-of-the-mill, spooky Resident Evil looking castle thing.
Just a normal, mansion that you see on Zillow or something. No big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. I mean, it's only like maybe a couple $100 million. Calm down. But yeah, we want to talk about vampires, kind of how it got started, why humans have always been fascinated with vampires. Are they real? Where did they come from? Fact from fiction, that sort of thing. What'd you find out?
You laid it out nicely there. And I'll say one thing just to kind of set the scene, I think, which is important. It's noted that every single modern and even pre-modern, I guess you could say, civilization from across the globe has some kind of folklore or some kind of horror kind of haunting story that they tell their kids and pass on through generations that is some form of a variation of a vampire type kind of persona, right? Every single one. You can take it all the way back to ancient Sumerian, ancient Egyptian, Aztecs, wherever. There's always something that's going bump in the night that is unworldly, that doesn't seem to be a part of the living or, quite frankly, part of the dead, kind of this in-between kind of purgatory type kind of zone that does feed off of people's, I'll just say this, life forces, because it's not always the drinking of blood, although that seems to be obviously the one that makes the most sense and relevant for a lot. So I got to lay that out there first. It's a story, but it's a story that's universal. So that leads me to kind of think there could be something to this, right? There could be something factual, again, not literal, the same thing as modern day vampires as we know it, but something factual that's happened in history that have led almost every civilization to think of this kind of horror figure, throughout history. So I'm just going to lay that out there first.
Yeah, and there are, modern vampires. So that's a thing, right? Are they puffing into clouds of smoke and flying around in mist, or turning into bats, or not seeing themselves in mirrors? Well, not that I know of, but I have seen the numbers around an estimated 5,000 plus people currently identify as being a vampire right now. There is a vampire church. There's vampire, the communities. Like, it is a thing. So people do that. that is a lifestyle choice that these folks make. And so, just to throw that out there are currently people in the world right now that claim they are vampires. And by all means, I think, therefore I am. You know what I mean? So
100%.
I'm not gonna be the one to tell them that they're full of shit, because it's like anything else. If that's their lifestyle choice, that's their lifestyle choice. But
now, is there anybody in this area, in this kind of crowd of people that have supernatural powers? Like you said, do they puff up and blow up into thin air? Do they turn into bats? Probably not. Do they still live in their mom's basement? Probably so. That's all I want to say.
maybe.
Allegedly,
there is something to that. So there's a couple of things, and you're right about the history. Really goes back to ancient Greece. Has a vampire theology that's mixed in with their, polytheism, right? So having to do with this person and this woman that fell in love. Apollo was mad and cursed this person, and made it to where the sunlight would burn his flesh. So there's this big, how the Greeks are. Greeks are. They have always like a betrayal and love story with all of their, sad things, right?
Sure.
So naturally, this cursed guy ends up making the deal with Hades. So
love that guy.
Eventually, he's granted immortality. So there's just a bunch of things that are going on with this, but the Greeks believed that a person became a vampire if they were immoral. So
makes sense.
Probably half of their Senate. A person became a vampire from improper burials, or if he suffered a violent death. If a vampire knocked on your door and you answered, you'd be attacked and transformed into a vampire. That whole vampires have to, be led into the house thing kind of started with the Greeks, and this is thousands of years ago. So this shit goes way back. The ancient Romans had vampires, which makes perfect sense since they believed in the same polytheistic values as the Greeks. Same set of gods, makes sense. Probably the same vampires.
They did what the Romans did best: is they conquered, they stole, and they just changed the names.
Right. So the ancient Romans called their vampires Strix, Strix, and it took on the picture of an owl, right? That dined on human blood and flesh, with a penchant for babies, of course.
Ooh.
So like you can't leave your chihuahuas out in the backyard unattended because of owls. You can't leave your babies around either because of owls. But
I guess a lot of people that don't live in Texas or New Mexico maybe don't get that reference too much, but they get the gist. They get the gist. Small dogs, big birds, don't leave them outside. Go ahead.
Yes. Right. Or babies. Right?
Don't leave your baby outside.
So the Romans carried on the tradition. On the other side of the continent there, Chinese vampires were more like zombies. So they thought these like kind of bodiless, rotting flesh corpses came around and kind of hopped around. Like they really described them as zombies, though. So that might be, in fact, where the zombie genre started, was with ancient Chinese vampires.
Sure.
Instead of eating brains, they were eating, humans, drinking their blood. But they're called the Jiangxi, which is, a blood sucker, right? India had one too, lived in the forest, probably to keep your kids out of the forest. But there was
makes sense.
Vampires in the forest that controlled wolves and dogs. So the hounds of hell probably
Mm-hmm.
stem
Mm-hmm.
from the Indian version. But the bottom line is you have so many different vampire stories that go back thousands of years. And if you combine them all, you really can see influences in the modern day Hollywood vampires
Yeah, 100%.
depicted in today's culture.
And you also see too, like you had just mentioned, some of these things not necessarily turn into modern day vampirific type entities, but also shapeshifters and like werewolves too. A
Yeah.
lot of these stories too, they just take on a different form, but it's always something that's very frightening, very terrifying, something that strikes fear into the hearts of children. Because let's face it, a lot of these stories, maybe again, there's some validity and there's some truth to some of these things in the background, but a lot of these stories are to scare their kids and to scare them straight, so to speak, right?
Right.
Don't do this. Don't go out at night. Oh, don't go out at night. Why? Because if you go out at night, this guy in the this guy in the alleyway is going to take you and suck your blood and throw your body away. You're dead, whatever. Right. So they all have this kind of common keep your kids in check kind of, I guess, point to them in a certain sense. But again, going back to kind of what I was saying too, and the point of like all of this commonality is when you have somebody in Japan, uh, a isolated island at this time in like say ancient times, right? Not much going on there, and the sense of intermingling with people in Euro Asia and beyond in South America and stuff. But you still divided between all these things where you can't have the telephone game, you still have very similar stories across the globe. So again, it leads me to kind of think there may be something to this. Now, kind of fast forwarding a little bit here, we talk about like, okay, all right, Scott, Bob, I buy it. Okay, throwing the line out there. I'm going to hold on to it a little bit. Reel me in, reel me in. Let's see if you can change my mind here or open my eyes to. Yeah, exactly. Um, so let's talk a little bit about really you have the allure of vampires and everything like this. I don't know if you saw this too, but the word vampire was starting to be used a lot in the late 1700s, early 1800s. English and French writers started to kick up a lot of stories about vampires, and they were always just kind of just evil, no good doer, kind of almost like the fool type or Joker type kind of characters. You know what I mean? Just wreaking havoc and playing tricks on people. However, though, you can take it back a little bit further when you think about, okay, is there anybody in history that legitimately seems like they are a vampire or they are an entity that, alive or dead, who cares, but definitely get some kind of gain out of draining the life force from other living beings? And you do have some people that are that fit that mold, that kind of build a little bit more allure and a little bit more validity, I guess, to the case of real live vampires. I'll take most notably Elizabeth Bathory. That's probably one of the earlier ones because it's what, in the 1600s. And I'll tell you what, these Austrian people, the whole area where like Transylvania is modern day, there's some some evil history going on there. Now, don't get me wrong. Pretty much every medieval society in Europe is pretty damn grotesque and evil. But if anybody doesn't know, she was a aristocratic maiden in modern day Hungary, right? Hungarian. So whatever that may be back then. But she literally is, I think the total somewhere up to 700 young women that she would have as maidens in her castle that she would kind of court, bring them in, kill them, and
Like Elaine.
literally, yeah, exactly. And literally bathe in their blood. And the first time it happened that she thought to herself, like, hey, this is giving me a rejuvenation of life. This is making me stay youthful, is she was getting her hair done by a young maiden. And of course, as anybody does, when somebody fucks up your haircut, you turn around and you slit their goddamn throat, right? That's what everybody does. So she did that. The blood spilled onto her arms, and she noticed, and I'll put air quotes up again because I think she's just batshit crazy, but after the blood kind of like ran down the parts of her arm, those parts of her arm looked more youthful and younger. So boom, right there, she's like, "Wow, this makes total sense. The blood of these virgins and these young maidens are going to keep me alive." And she proceeded to do that to nearly over 600 women before eventually she was caught, because literally I think almost everybody's daughter in her village and neighboring village and kingdoms was missing. So I think she might be the very first one that really plays to like, whoa, this is disgusting. She's literally making a lifetime hobby out of drinking people's blood and bathing in their blood to remain youthful. So that's the first one. Bob, I'll let you go ahead and crack the elephant in the room if you want to talk about Vladdy.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to point out that she started that in 1590 to
Mm-hmm.
1610. So she had 20 years. So in 20 years, she killed 600 ish young women. So that was her thing. So by all accounts, one of the most gruesome serial killers in general in the history of our world, right? I do want to talk about Vlad the Impaler.
Vlad Tepish.
So Vlad Vlad the Third, right?
There's a long history of Vladdies.
So Vlad the Impaler was a man. He was a royal family of Wallachia.
I would just
Wallachia. It's probably Achia, but
just go with it. Just go with it,
so
Bob.
1431. So we're talking like the nearing the end of the Dark Ages, right? Um, he was he was captured at some point by a Turkish ruler, right, and enslaved, right, and this is where he gained his, you know, hatred towards Muslims and the Turkish at that point. So he eventually busted out of there, right, and came back home. He was involved with some military operations with neighboring, monarchs around his homeland. Finally, got to invade his home country again and seize control of it, and became the ruler of his own country once again. So this is over like a 10, 15 year time span that he went abroad, got fucked up, got enslaved, got brutalized, escaped, came back, worked his way back, conquered his own land, and became the man again. So Vlad, right? Now, mind you, he had a very eventful young adulthood
Very.
because he died at 45, and man, he accomplished so much. so,
He really did. He really did.
so I mean, I couldn't imagine like that kind of life by our age. I mean, we were nearing the end of his life already. So the Turkish were constantly trying to invade his country and take over, and so he kept fighting them off and fighting them off. And how he got his name for the Impaler was that he wanted to deter people. So the warriors that he captured and his slaves that he had captured from battles, he killed and impaled all around his land and property. So that way, when armies would roll up, they'd literally see hundreds or thousands of people hanging, rotting from stakes, like these huge
Mhm.
30-foot pyres, right? So, that would be a deterrent for me because you'd probably smell that from like a couple miles away
You'd
or
smell it and
more.
you'd see it, and yeah. I mean, it just doesn't seem very normal. You know what I mean? As an Ottoman general, marching to Vlad's castle or what have you, knowing that he's already got a pretty hardcore reputation in general for being a badass and somebody that has like no remorse or anything, and just kind of make let's just face it, he doesn't leave any prisoners. I'll tell you that. You know what I mean? He
Right.
literally he takes them and then he impales them and makes them part of his cute little collection that he has. But yeah, I would have to say that would be a pretty big deterrent for me to just march my men right up to a castle where literally all of maybe their brothers and cousins are like hanging on spikes outside there, accumulating more and more flies and things of that nature. Yeah, pretty rough. Pretty rough.
So all in all, it's estimated that Vlad uh, killed around, well, not even just killed. I mean, there's plenty of wars, probably 3 times this, but just the humans that he impaled on his properties around his castle are estimated to be 40,000 or more. So this is a brutal time in history, just in general. So
It really is.
this is what, a couple hundred years after the Crusades ended, and people were still really doing whatever the fuck they felt like doing. Again, there was no international community really. International travel involved invasions at
Yeah,
this
this
point.
this is
So,
true. This is
there
true.
wasn't a whole lot of trade and international travel going on these days. But 40,000 people is pretty impressive considering that they all died from the end of a spear or a sword.
Sure. And here's something I do want to emphasize though, and really make sure people underscore this idea is, although Vlad the Impaler, and let's face it, the reason why he's in the conversation is more of the inspiration that Bram Stoker got for the name and somewhat of the location of his fictional character Dracula in his novel in 1890, right? Because if you think about it, just talking about Bathory, right? That person actually got in there with the blood and thought that that was doing something to rejuvenate and keep her youthful glow or whatever, right? Very much like Maybelline. Maybe it's Maybelline, maybe it's the blood of maidens. I don't know. But Vlad really didn't do it. He was a sick fuck. Don't get me wrong, but he didn't really indulge in anything that actually pointed to vampirism, right? It was just more, he was a very sadistic, ruthless, cold-blooded massacre artist that had a thirst for power. But because his family name, Dracula or whatever, meaning like little dragon or whatever, that was part of his creed, like, part of his what do they call it? Not his creed.
Crest.
Like, yeah, crest, something like,
name.
like probably, that kind of idea. That's really the big thing, is he had the castle, he had the creepy castle, and did something very, very maniacal and disgusting and evil. And then his name also borrowed as well, kind of with Bram Stoker. Now, which is interesting too. The other thing I wanted to highlight about Mr. Vlad and Bram Stoker, and let's face it, Dracula, the best-selling novel of all time that has anything to do with this, skyrocketed the popularity of vampirism and just vampires in general and the pop culture. And it didn't even become like a famous book until after he died, which is kind of sad. The other thing
that's typical, right?
That's very typical, especially back then. The other thing that I think is interesting is Bram Stoker's Irish, and Dracula, in I think a Gaelic dialect, is translated to bad blood. Very interesting too. So some people say maybe Vlad the Impaler's name was more of just a coincidental thing, that it ended up being Bram Stoker's Dracula. You know what I mean? Because also bad blood is what it directly means in Gaelic. So pretty interesting. But again, I think he's more of an inspiration for a bad man with a really cool castle that played into like how he wrote his story and that castle, more so than an actual real live vampire. I just wanted to go over that real quick.
Yeah, and I also wanted to hit on too. By all accounts, Vlad the Third Dracula was a good ruler for his people, a good king, a monarch, whatever they called him. I think they called him prince, but a good ruler for his people. Benevolent, was good to them, protected them. So he was ruthless to his enemies. Right. So not against his own people. So of those impaled, very few were his own people. Only, those that were convicted of crimes or whatever. Right.
I'm sure pissed him off or something, spit near his foot, that kind of stuff.
Of course.
Yeah.
But so the stories that are so heinous from Vlad are actually written by the opposing side of the war. So all the drawings that are drawn of these were drawn from invaders. The stories that have come up with invaders, and they came up with the story of, he probably, quote, runs around and collects their blood and drinks their blood at night and all this stuff. So a lot more of the common, myths and everything that came from Vlad as a vampire actually came from these scary stories that were written by, the losers of these wars, right up until the last war that he lost. And they beheaded him and took his head or his scalp, depending on who you're talking to, back to the Ottoman Empire and yada, yada, yada. Because this was a bane on their efforts to invade Europe, was going through what, modern day Hungary is where this is now?
Hungary, Romania.
So,
yeah.
So just to kind of do that, so I just wanted to be, a lot of the clear vampire tales and myths that come from this don't come from like his own empire saying that, oh, this guy is like an evil king and all that. Well, yeah, but he literally for, a decade protected his kingdom from invading Ottoman Empire, which, if you know your history, was quite a fucking effort. So,
yeah.
So that's kind of Vlad, but he was the first kind of rock star
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
the Dracula myth, the Dracula effort, someone that people could really focus on. And
Mhm.
to this day, when you think of Dracula in history, most people go right to Vlad the
Well,
Impaler, Vlad Dracula.
and I will say this though, you're absolutely right. He's the rock star of the vampire movement from a historical standpoint, right? I mean, again, he's got the look. You know what I mean? Let's just put it
Oh,
that way.
definitely. That weird
Um,
flat mustache. I mean,
yeah, I don't know if I can
that
handle
thing
that.
went to like his jawbone.
But to add a little bit to the allure, to add the a little bit to the exclamation point on the question mark, if that makes sense, the little bottom of it. To add to it, one thing that I think is very cool, and obviously there's easy ways to debunk this, grave robbers, whatever. But what is really cool is when he was buried, his body was obviously there. Whether he was missing something, whatever. His coffin was excavated and actually opened in 1931. There was nothing in there. So that again is kind of a cool little thing about Vlad's after his death. You know what I mean? Is they wanted to go in there, exhume the body, check things out. The coffin is completely empty. Again, that can be proven on why that is very easily, but that definitely adds to the mystique of him being the original Dracula, or so on, so on and so forth. But the other thing I want to mention too, you kind of fast forward a little bit. I had to even take note of this too, because I thought this was very interesting. Again, Eastern European kind of, you know, history is very weird, very strange, very, very barbaric time, even in like more of a civilized kind of, era, you'll say. But um Austria, 1732. So this is after Vladi, after Elizabeth, right? We're getting now into
After
almost
the
modern,
Renaissance.
yeah, almost modern times. We're in the Victorian era pretty much right now. But there was an Austrian soldier that was noted to he died, and again, kind of same thing. A grave was kind of empty or something like that, couldn't be found, and he was all kinds of other military people, doctors, and then villagers saw this guy in the night, like roaming around and feeding on people or whatever. So again, just out of nowhere, the story pops up where this happened in 1732. So I don't even remember the gentleman's name. I don't think it was really that important, but what it did is, because there was this story go around, how fear works, right? People start talking, it starts, accumulating more and more, turns into like a mass hysteria. There was what they call in the 1730s a vampire epidemic in Austria, with a lot of sightings of other people that they thought were creeping around in the night, trying to harm people. So interesting how that happened. Again, what, call it a few hundred years after all this. So, and this is before Bram Stoker and everything. So there's been a lot of stories in history that, whether or not it's true or not, why are people coming up with these outlandish stories? You know what I mean? To me, there's always got to be a slice of fact in there with a lot of fiction. So,
Yeah, at least a little bit.
mhm.
It's very interesting though, just the vampire tale and how similar they all are for thousands of years, right?
Mhm.
Um, I don't know, before the internet, before Wikipedia.
Yeah, yeah, seriously. But I mean,
But
beyond that, though, if you fast forward to modern times, I mean, besides, I mean, we could talk about it too. I think you touched on it. There is the Temple of the Vampire, which seems to be a sect of Satanism, I believe. That is the modern day. I don't know. You did some research on this too. Now, tell us a little bit more about modern vampires, because I feel that you touched on this a bit more with your research.
well, so there's a movement of modern vampires that really kind of goes back to the 90s. It's kind of more kind of when it started kicking up more. So there's a couple of factors to this. There's the vampire movement that started from the role-playing vampire game, and then there was convention. So we're not talking like millions of people, but definitely tens of thousands of people, like at least going out to cosplay vampires, getting into the lifestyle. Um, and that kind of spurned it. 1994's Interview with a Vampire came out, right?
Oh, that
The
that
movie
reignited the juices.
that
Absolutely.
really jumped everything up. The cosplay game was still originally kind of influenced by Anne Rice's original
Mhm.
vampire and the book, right, which came out I think in the mid 70s.
Yeah, I want to say
So
the same thing. Yeah.
so there's this kind of this slow boiling roll of more and more prevalent vampire. 94's Interview with the Vampire, of course, had, Cruise and Pitt. So this thing
Can I
went,
say something real quick?
yeah,
I will say, and again, I know there's a little bit of mystique about my sexuality sometimes with some people, but goddamn, I'll tell you what, that movie in general, best looking actors of the '90s in their heyday, all loaded up. You got Brad Pitt, you got Tom Cruise, you got Antonio Banderas, and you got Christian Slater, all in the same fucking film. Watch it.
yeah, yeah. It's a fantastic film. So if you kids out there haven't seen it, you guys should really partake. It's a perfect time of year to watch Interview with the Vampire.
100%. 100%. Anyways, I'm sorry to interject with my homoerotic commentary.
No, 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 do it, man. It's just like a modern day Huck Finn. So we're uh we're moving forward to the 90s. The Interview with the Vampire came out, and then you fast forward to like 98, right? Blade came out. And I hate to intertwine all things with movie, but man, art imitates life, imitates art. It's definitely an influencer, right? So Blade came out and almost 100% depicted the vampire role-playing series. Right.
Sure.
So, but that's a
Sure.
huge impact. We all saw Blade. Blade's a fantastic series.
Great
Right.
movie.
And then
Mhm.
just a few years later, we're creeping in, and then the younger kids with the Twilight stuff, another interjection of vampire into mainstream media. But the bottom line is there's been a slow boiling roll that's been increasing over the last 20, 30 years of just more and more vampire, to where now you even have a club in LA called Fang. Right. And
Yes.
people go
Yes.
to this club, and it's like a vampire exclusive club. You go there to be a vampire or to be prey or subservient to vampires. Like that is the thing. And like most people have prosthetic teeth, and like it's a crazy club. Probably fun to go there. But
Is there like AIDS testing at the door or something like that? Or how do they stay away from that? I mean, that seems a little bit, I don't know, dicey to me. But anyways, please proceed.
I don't know, but I know that there's definitely the modern vampires that we spoke of with the thousands that exist. They definitely do. This is like a club for vampires, and I'm sure it's not the only one. I'm sure there's a
Sure.
couple few
Sure.
around the country,
Sure.
but just the modern day vampires, they do partake in blood. Some of them do it for more religious reasons. Some of them do it for more spiritual reasons, as far as like interpersonal connection issues. There's the donor or the subservient person that usually like works with a vampire, or some couples do it where one
Yeah.
is a
It's the
vampire and the other it's a
so the vampire gimp, right? You know what I mean?
yeah,
The
it's
vamp
the dom sub thing in the vampire world, right?
the vamp bitch, you know? Yeah, that kind of deal.
Yes.
I like that. I like that.
So it definitely exists. We're not talking usually cupfuls of blood here, although there are people that believe in that sort of thing. There was this one lady I was watching said, I only like fresh blood because once it's like poured into a cup, it starts getting cold, it starts coagulating. I don't like it anymore. It's
I
got to
saw
be
that too.
fresh and pumping.
She's got to get it. We watched the same thing there, but she's got to get her blood fresh from the wound. When
I
it's still
understand.
warm, it's still probably got a little bit of a heartbeat reverberation going on. Who knows? But yeah, that makes sense too, because blood, as you know, as it sits for a minute, it starts to change. I'm sure it's not very tasty as it's coagulating and turning into like a paste.
Yeah, dude,
Yeah.
I don't like my frozen margaritas unless they're right from the pitcher. I mean, what, a
Yeah.
half frozen margarita and a half regular margarita? No one likes that.
Yeah. And you don't like your semen unless it's straight from the faucet too. You know what I
Of
mean?
course, of course. It's got to be right from the source, hot.
You got to be able to squeeze it out. Okay.
So there's other vampires too. Just kind of in history that's modern history.
Sure.
So I mean, there's the Vampire of Hanover, right? Fritz Harman,
Harmon, yeah,
uh,
we're taking a step back again, right? Where does he go? He's late.
1925
Okay.
is when he was executed.
Hmm.
So this is in the
I would say most of his stuff done around the turn of the century, then, right? Somewhere around
yeah,
there.
this was done. Let's see. So he got executed in 25. So knowing the speed of things, but I believe he was from here. Let me look. Uh, I don't see.
Well,
Oh,
he's in
Germany.
history.
So he was
Oh,
Germany.
wow. Well, that makes
So
sense.
he would actually like lure young teenage boys back to his house, and and bite their necks and kill them like crazy style, like vampire style, right? And he killed 27 that's known. So it's has a little plus by it. So
You
there's
know,
more than 27 men that he killed, and they're all men and boys. Well,
what a
teenage
rookie.
boys.
That's all I got to say. He's got to pump those numbers up
Yeah,
if he wants to touch Elizabeth Bathory or Vladi, he needs to really pump it up. But
for
I
real.
understand, you know.
So he was eventually caught and executed by guillotine in
Ooh,
1925. So let's not think that guillotine's such a part of ancient history here. So as the
no.
stock market's booming in the U.S., there's a vampire being executed by guillotine in Germany.
And I want to say I want to say France was still using the guillotine up until like I'm just going out on a limb here. I want to say like 50s or 60s or something like that. I mean, don't even fact check me. I like if it stays a little bit gray. But no, there's a couple of countries that still use the guillotine well into the 20th century is my point.
Oh yeah, there's another vampire killer that got caught. Similar, but his are more like little girls and little kids. But
Mm.
this is a vampire at Dusseldorf, right? In
Oh, Dumbledore.
1930,
Yeah,
ni-
from
in 1931, he was finally caught and beheaded. So he died from guillotine in 1931 in Germany again. So Germany's a fan of the quick, huge blade and
well,
the head rolling. Heads will
say
roll.
say what you will, Germany has been able to clean up their reputation in recent times, but they have some skeletons in their closet from a while ago. So it makes sense. It makes sense. Not that I'm, saying anything about it. I'm going to be very, very vague, like nobody knows what I'm talking about. But Germany does have a dark history.
A little bit.
Too soon?
But just and even in 1991, there was a vampire that was caught in Brazil. And the same thing, he liked kids for some reason. His name was
Weird.
Marcelo Costa de Andrade. Vampire of Niterói is his name.
Kind of
Anyway,
sounds
he
cool.
got caught murdering 14 boys, and we're talking like kids, like anywhere between like the age of 5 and 15. Like this is a sick fuck. And they caught him, and he is still in a mental institute. He was found incapable of standing trial, so he was a nutbag. Um, but again,
Yeah.
that's 1991, so this isn't like fucking ancient times here. It was 30 years ago. So just be careful. There's fucking vampires out there. It's a real thing. And even if there's not metaphysical crazy vampires, there's people out there that'll fucking eat you.
Yeah. Oh, and it's worth mentioning too that there's a whole I'll just say different line of taking this vampirific lifestyle, and there's a whole thing about psychic vampires which seem a hell of a lot more plausible than blood-sucking creatures of the night that turn into bats and stuff like that. And again, just to sum it up quickly, we don't have to go too far into it, but these are people that are legitimately supposed to be supernatural in the sense that they do build and receive energy from sucking the life force out of people from a distance. And it could be just their mental life force, right? They don't ever even need to touch them. They barely even need to be in the same room as people. But there's been a lot of documentation, which seems a hell of a lot more plausible just because of the absence of killing and blood drinking and all this kind of stuff, that people have noted being empty feeling, not being able to think right, whatever. So there's that angle too, that that there's a lot of documentation about. So I think the idea of a vampire in essence and what they do is universal, but how they accomplish it and the products that they use, or the life force, quote unquote, that they take from people, is up for debate. So I think it can really be something that we'll continue to talk about, I think. And I think that the allure and the infamous idea of vampires and the I guess the likability is not going to go away anytime soon. I mean, you talked about that. I think every cycle, every few years or so, there's always some badass or very popular vampire based movie or novel that comes out, which kind of reignites pop culture. So
Well, and just in case anyone hasn't seen, for our younger stiffies, Bram Stoker's Dracula, 1992 film. Watch it. You can't
great
go
one.
wrong. I mean,
Gary,
Anthony Hopkins, Gary Oldman, Winona Ryder, good friend of the show, Keanu Reeves.
Oh, Keanu. Yeah, of course. I forgot
and then,
about
of
him.
course, like a smoking Monica Bellucci as Bram Stoker's wife. So don't miss
Mm-hmm.
out on that. But yeah, great flick.
It's a good one. Well, you got the early '90s were jam packed, but the late '80s too. You had 1987. You had Lost Boys come out. That like every adolescent thought vampires were the ultimate shit. Then,
It's still one of my favorite movies.
oh, hands down. Then a few years later, you got Bram Stoker's Dracula coming out with some of the best actors of modern time. 2 years later, you've got Interview with the Vampire that hits the scene with the best looking men in Hollywood. It's hard to get away from vampires. At that time, goodness, balls deep.
Well, that's kind of our spiel on vampires. If you can't tell, we like vampires.
We do.
It's kind of a thing, but I think we've run out of time on talking about it. But
Mm-hmm. Good stuff, though.
if
Fun
anyone
times.
wants to bring of note any other modern or historical vampires that are worth hitting up, please put it on the Facebook, put it in the comments of the YouTube, put it somewhere. We always like to hear from the Stiffies.
Yeah, and especially on this topic, if we miss some heavy hitters, some key players in the historical vampire world, please inform us. I mean, we kind of summed up who we thought would be marquee to talk about, but I'm always excited to learn more about this subject. So if I miss something, if I'm not in the know, if I'm ignorant, please enlighten me, please. So,
but only one call at a time, one email at a time.
Yeah, I can't multitask. I can't be overwhelmed I can't be inundated by my fans. Okay. Here's the
thing. So in the end, dude, historical vampires are nothing more than serial killers with a particular flavor of killing. Right. And that's just kind of the end of it. So that kind of led us to kind of the stiff truth topic for the day. We wanted to talk about just in general serial killers. And kind of go over the list, kind of who the notorious ones are, who our favorite ones are. We did spend a little bit of time. The vampire one was way more entertaining. The serial killer one, I've kind of kept tabs on over the years. But
sure.
what did you find out in looking at the serial killers?
Well, tell you what, and I'm not sure if to be proud of this or not, but I am a serial killer enthusiast. I do find these people quite remarkable that they are less than probably 1% of the population, yet what they do to me, not to me personally, but what they do in my mind is so ridiculously outside of humanity that it really, they shine, right? They shine for the wrong reasons, but serial killers are very interesting to me. And we talk about here, I mean, we've got the heavy hitters everybody knows about. You've got Dahmer, you've got Gacy, you've got Ted Bundy, you've got Ed Gein, you got even Eileen Warnos too, if you want to go with more of a female track there. You've got the Son of Sam, you got the Hillside Stranglers, you've got BTK Killer, you got the Zodiac Killer. Yeah, you got a lot to choose from here. But what I really find interesting about serial killers in general is they seem to all have, and we talked about this before the show, they seem to have this recipe, right? This cocktail of an upbringing that it seems to be perfect to pop out a product of a serial killer and somebody that thrives off of massacring people and large numbers and never getting enough of it. And the other thing that I think is very interesting about serial killers is the notoriety that they gain. You know what I mean? I don't think it's unusual, but I just think it's very interesting that these are people that will go down in history and nobody will ever forget them, and
they're immortal.
And they'll continue to perpetuate their stories for the end of time. Very similar to vampires, right? But when I really think about, and I'm just gonna jump right into this here, and I hate to put it this way, but who's my favorite serial killer, right? Who do I think? And I have a hard time with that because let's face it, they all did some ridiculously horrible things that I can never get behind. So I don't want to come off that way. But we talked about it a little bit before the show. I think there's a couple of guys or girls here that I think are just are standouts in my book, and I think we both have this as a common thing. To not be caught or to take a while to get caught or to be very elusive for a long time and do this is pretty impressive, regardless, especially as you get more into modern times, but even back in the day. So with that being said, I'm going to say a couple of my marquee serial killers as a classic here too. I've got to say that, Jesus, I just lost it. Oh, that's hard.
Are you
Oh,
looking at the homegirl's name?
no. I was gonna go back. Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I got it. I'm back again. The drink is gone, but it's a good one. So,
It
and
is a good one.
it's a good one. But I'm gonna go with Jack the Ripper is one of my all time favorites.
That's a dandy.
Yeah, Jack the Ripper is one of my all time favorites. Now he did some nasty things, but he did it, I think, and this is why. I'll just kind of sum it up quickly. Very smart, very methodical, and seemed to do this in the cover of a perfect recipe of circumstances and just in this in the scene, right? So if anybody doesn't know, this is all taking place in the late 1800s in a very poor area of London, and nobody really cared, although it was very rampant about prostitutes and whores or what have you. And this is kind of his victims and who he went after. And there's a lot of theories about who this guy was and if they ever got close to catching the guy. But he was able to kill five main girls and completely mutilated their bodies and kind of dissected things and took body parts out. Claimed, and it looks like he also had some kind of surgical background or some kind of medical background as well. But very mysterious guy, was able to get in and get out, do some of the nastiest, most horrendous things to people of all time. And the guy's never, ever been caught. So, and they have theories, but they really have no idea who the guy is. And there's so many cool theories. And I think that's one of the coolest things about that gentleman. Number two, and this is where I'll kind of turn it over to you after this. I'm a big fan of BTK. I'm a big fan of bind, torture, kill. Not what he did. I have to say that. It was nasty. But this was somebody else that seemed to find pleasure and excitement about toying with the authorities, sending letters every now and again with little hints and things, knowing that he was always a couple steps ahead of the cops. Now, granted, he ended up getting caught in 2004 and blah, blah, blah. Dennis Rader's his actual name. But I thought up until that point, he was very dialed in, very mysterious, and I think probably kept people on their toes for decades. You know what I mean? Of who the fuck is this guy? We can't catch him, and kept the fear in people's hearts. But I think that leads me to start turning over to you here because I think you have somebody of similar recognition.
Well, I was gonna, but I kind of had a last minute overtake in my choice. So I was gonna go with the Zodiac Killer, which is kind of the original BTK killer, right? As far as he liked to kill people and he liked to send articles or like, the typical piecemeal letters that are like cut out of magazines and sent in for ransom notes and shit like that. That was the Zodiac Killer, right? He would send all this kind of crazy shit to like news places and police stations and whatever, just to fuck with everyone. Never got caught. And since the murders were in 69 and the sketch from him's, kind of a younger middle-aged man, he's most likely dead by now. So not as scary that he's still out there. But the more I started thinking about it and looking into like kind of my favorite, most devious killers, there's a man by the name of H.A. Holmes. H.H. Holmes.
Oh, right? Yes.
Dr. Holmes, right? He confessed to 27 murders, and he's believed to have killed as many as 200 people.
Well, he had the murder. He had the murder hotel or what have you in Chicago.
Right. So he ran a hotel, but this hotel was basically self-sufficient because most hotels were back in the day. So they had their own generators, they had their own this, they had their own that. But this ran a hotel like basically equipped for killing and disposing of bodies. So it was outfitted with gas lines to pump into guest rooms, giant furnaces, lime and acid pits, large vaults, and he would torture, suffocate, strangle his victims, and then dispose of them in the lime and acid pits. So their bodies were never ever found, right? But he was eventually apprehended in 1894, and he was hanged in Philly in 1896. So he did all these murders in the early 1890s. But just the thought of a crazy hotel where dozens of people have gone missing from, and how creepy that would be to have to stay there because your company is like, no, we have a deal with this hotel. So sorry, buddy. Rates are really cheap. I bet so.
we get all our points staying here, bro. So you got to just muscle it out. But it's interesting that you brought that up too, because I didn't forget about H.H. Holmes. He's America's serial killer, like back in the day. And there's actually one of the theories of who Jack the Ripper is they believe it's H.H. Holmes, which again has been kind of debunked by a lot of people that are scholarly in this, but it is very interesting that there is that connection because 1880s, I believe, is when all this shit happened in England for Jack the Ripper. Then what if things got hot, which he already knew would? He can't settle down. He's got a thirst for it, right? So he moves to Chicago, fucking engineers this ridiculous death machine hotel and start kicking up business there. Why not, right?
What's possible? He was a doctor.
Yes.
And he would have been just out of medical school, which I know a lot of theories were that it was a young medical student that was killing those hookers, right? So, sorry, prostitutes.
Oh, we're going to lose some fans.
Gotta be PC. I don't want to, lose the hookers that listen to the show. But interesting thing about H.H. Holmes is he accomplished all of this by the age of 35 is when he was killed. So he was caught at 33 and then, hanged at 35. So, he became a doctor. He went through med school. He killed like 27 to 200 people. I mean, wow. These killers, man, they're like, I'm just happy that I've done what little I have done, but compared to some of these serial killers and historical figures that have just killed thousands of people, I feel like I'm like really short on my game here. Like I really are accomplished enough.
They are really motivated people. I'll tell you that. They're the Doogie Housers of killing, which I think is just quite impressive right there. It's really quite impressive. No, H.H. Holmes is he's a pinnacle of the topic. I'm glad you brought him up. Beyond that though, talking about all this death, Bob. If you had to be taken out, maybe not even by a serial killer, what do you think what's a good death for you? What's the best death?
I don't know, man.
This is a hard one, huh?
Well,
dying's not fun.
I've always kind of thought being like run through with a broadsword and just kind of sitting there at the end when you only have a little bit of time left and you have your dramatic few words that you get to say will always kind of be a good way to go. Maybe that, maybe in the honor of Vlad, the impalement, just not, up through my butt, through my torso and hanging there. I could do without that.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and say just clean and quick, but then something that could be fun and comical afterwards. So I'll go with decapitation. I would be okay with the guillotine slicing my head off super quick. But what I think would be fun about it too is you do whatever you want with my head afterwards. I mean, replace it as a hood ornament on a nice old Cadillac or something like that, and drive me through town, honking the horn, like maybe like almost like a clown horn or something like that going through town. I mean, make it fun. You know what I mean? Make me a spectacle. I'm okay with that. I'm already dead, but I want it to be clean and quick. So I think that's probably the way I'd want to go.
Well, we all want it to be clean and quick. Unfortunately, these murderous bastards usually have other plans.
They do. That's why I hope anybody that catches me is more of a product killer than a process killer, because they don't really have a lot of fun with people, like why they're doing it. They just need to kill you first and then play with you. And I'm okay with that.
Okay, so when you're talking about decapitation, I was just kind of like instantly pictured like Faces of Death. Like the car accident and the hood just flies and cuts someone's head off real quick. Look,
that's okay too.
I made it. I'm not in the accident. And then there goes the head, right? I don't know why.
I don't know how. I don't know how, but I was thrown clean of the accident.
Look, I made it. I beat.
Like a big smile on your face as you're decapitated.
And then I'm over here like my grand fantasy is to die the Mercutio death. The slow. I get to curse both of your houses on the way out.
Yeah, Bob's looking for like a 20-minute monologue as he's dying.
That's
which
right.
I like.
I have to give my monologue on the way out.
It's like, Bob, do you have any final thoughts? Yeah, actually, I do. Pull out a piece of paper. You're like, I have this written speech I wanted to get out of here real quick. Well, I'll tell you, flip side, I wouldn't like to be tortured and kind of left almost, hanging by a thread with my life as they have fun with it. That doesn't sound fun at all. That sounds horrible.
Yeah, and a lot of the serial killers raped their victims first, so I could do without that.
Again, post-mortem, I'm fine with that. Do what you want.
Right.
I'm okay with what I'm already dead raping. You guys have your fun.
How was your death? Well, I had this out-of-body experience. What was that like? Well, it was unpleasant.
It was kind of like going to prison, but worse.
Yeah, because there's a couple of the serial killers on this list that preferred their sexual activities while the body was getting colder, and
Good old Ted Bundy. He was one of those guys. He liked to have sex with the dead bodies and sit there and chat with them and have cigarettes, smoke cigarettes while he's just laying there with dead bodies. I'm just going to leave people with that because I think that's really like it's very optimistic, very positive way of ending the show. So, Bob, do you have anything?
I don't. Thank you guys for listening. Bring us in. Like I said, next week's show, we're going to do it a day early just so that we have one more Halloween show to do because fucking Halloween's the best.
Fucking A. We're going to squeeze in another Halloween special here, guys. But hey, like Bob said, guys, this is it. I mean, we knocked out another fantastic conversation here. A lot of great topics. I had a blast, Bob. I know you did as well. And guys, don't forget to help us out if you can. I mean, throw us a fucking bone. Get in there, like and subscribe. Write a review. It's pretty easy. Hey, you know what? Get on Apple. This podcast is the shit. It's the bee's knees. It's the tits. You know what I'm saying?
There's also Patreon if you guys want to help out. There's an I'm poor level. There's a you guys are okay level, and there's a I fucking love you guys. I want you to sleep with my wife level.
Yeah. Although I know the most recent is truth about everybody that listens, go ahead and jump in the on poor level if you want to, even if you're not. Just give us a little slice. But other than that, guys, thanks again for I guess lending your time with me and Bob and letting us just kind of spill all over the place with our words. It's really fun. We enjoy it. So enjoy the rest of your beautiful day and week here coming up. And get crazy, guys. Get in there, kill some people, drink their blood. Or no, maybe that's bad advice, Bob. Do you
or just decorate your house for Halloween.
There we go. Yeah, put the ghost and the witches in the front yard. Have a good time. Watch some horror movies. But hey, guys, until next time, I love you. Bob loves you. We all love you. Take care.
See ya. This is the Stiff Truth.